Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I of course prepared some notes for the speech, and I think it's important that we do so because we're dealing with a topic that is very sombre and very serious and demands from all of us a bit of reflective thinking. But I can't help but reflect on the comments by the member for McAllister, which I found quite extraordinary. The member for McAllister would have us believe that the former government acted in the interests of victims, when in actual fact the only interest the former government had in victims was producing more of them.
They were very successful too.
Yep. And Mr. Speaker,
Order, member for McAllister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not taking that interjection because I think to do
Order,
so.
member.
I think to do so would be an outrage because the former government let down thousands of victims of crime when they oversaw what must be the greatest scandal in the way justice is delivered in this state, and that is their failure to properly manage a forensics lab. Yep. Now, the member for McAllister would talk about justice being served in a court. Well, I think about those victims who didn't get their day in the court because there was no evidence to bring before the courts. What about those victims? And what about those victims of rape who had to wait over 412 days to have their samples tested? 398 days longer than the Queensland Police Service demands. What about those victims? So when we have members opposite strutting into this House, trying to talk up on behalf of victims, finally, I call bogus. Because as the member for
Point of order, Chair.
Please take a seat, member for Burleigh.
I stand in this House as a child survivor and I take personal offence to the member's suggestion that my claims are bogus.
Thank you very much. It's very clear who the member was referring to. Is the member willing to withdraw?
Absolutely. Very happy to withdraw, Mr. Speaker. So when members opposite come into this place and try to point to a record of acting on behalf of victims, I cry foul. Mr. Speaker, the truth of the matter is that we have far too many victims of crime in this state. It's something that our government is working hard to address. And it's a big task because the numbers are so staggering, and they have their genesis in the very laws that the member from McAllister lauded. For example, the watering down of the Youth Justice Act, which created more perpetrators and more victims in the state of Queensland. So, I don't believe, as the member for McAllister does, that track record is worth celebrating because it does a disservice to victims. But Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, turning my attention now to the bill, which is yet another step this government is taking to stand up for victims, I want to point out that this work will define where we stand. And it begs the question, do we stand with offenders, letting reputation, connections or silence in the courtroom reduce responsibility, or do we stand with victims, recognising their harm, their dignity and their right to see justice done? Well, the answer, of course, is that under this government, we stand with victims. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as we've heard, the Queensland Sentencing Advisory Council, they did review the state of sentencing for rape and sexual assault, and they found what victims already knew, that the law too often minimised their experiences. This bill fixes that. First, it makes offences against 16 and 17-year-olds an aggravating factor. Victims at that age are still children. They deserve the full protection of the law, and their age must count against the offender at sentencing. Second, it expands the very purpose of sentencing to include recognition of harm done to the victim. Now, that's a profound shift. It says clearly to victims, the justice system sees you, acknowledges you, and does not treat your pain as a footnote. And third, it reforms that so-called good character evidence. For far too long in this state, offenders have stood in court with letters of reference or claims of standing in the community as though reputation should outweigh the suffering of their victims. Well, Mr. Speaker, that stops here. From now on, such claims only matter if they speak directly to rehabilitation or the risk of reoffending. And if good character enabled the offending, it can never, ever be a shield. We will not let offenders hide behind their social standing while victims are left voiceless. And fourth, it makes clear that the absence of a victim impact statement does not mean that there was no harm. Silence cannot and must not be held against a victim. Every survivor has the right to choose whether to speak, and that choice will not diminish the seriousness of their suffering. Each of these reforms has one message at its core, and that is we stand with victims. Mr. Speaker, they say politics is about contrast, and I believe our government offers Queensland not only contrast but hope. And it pays to explain what that contrast is, because elections matter. Here lays the contrast. Labor rushed out half-baked reforms. Their version would have weakened the recognition of harm. Their version would have tied the hands of courts in assessing offenders' character. Their version excluded some victims altogether. It was legislation written for the cameras and not for victims. This government chose a different path. We took the time to consult, we listened to survivors and advocates, we respected the committee process, and we wrote a bill that will stand up in the courtroom, not just in a media release. That is the disciplined, principled way the Liberal National Party governs. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when people ask what the LNP stands for, I will point to this bill. We believe victims should never be an afterthought. We believe the harm they suffer must be recognised. We believe their voices must carry weight in the courtroom. And we believe in strong, trustworthy institutions that protect the vulnerable, not the powerful. That is the choice before this House, to keep victims at the centre or to let them slip back into the margins. This government has chosen. We stand with victims, and I commend the bill to the House.
Speaker.
Thank you. I call the member.